Ever wonder what's truly happening inside your body? Um, Far beyond what you can actually see. Today, we're taking a real deep dive, right down to the cellular level, into one of your most vital systems, the cardiovascular system. Our mission, really, is to cut through some of the complexity of microscopic anatomy. We're connecting the dots between the tiniest, tiny cellular bits and the massive impact they have on your health. We're drawing from Histology, a text and atlas, 8th edition, to bring you the most important insights, some surprising facts, and those crucial connections to everyday health.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about understanding not just what these incredibly intricate structures look like under the microscope, but why they function the way they do. And importantly, what happens when those delicate systems go off track will be your guides to the heart's hidden layers, the specialized cells, the blood vessels, and even the often overlooked lymphatic system.
So let's unpack this fascinating microscopic world that keeps your blood flowing and your body going. Okay, so to pick us off, when we talk about the cardiovascular system, what are its core components? What's its grand mission for our bodies?
Well, at its heart, it's the body's ultimate transport system. You've got the heart itself, the tireless pump that's kind of the engine. And then there's this vast, intricate network of blood vessels, arteries, capillaries, veins.
The highways and roads?
Exactly, the superhighways and the local roads for your blood.
Mm.
But, don't forget the lymphatic vessels. They carry lymph, which is a vital fluid in its own right. This entire system is constantly moving everything you need: oxygen, nutrients, hormones, immune cells, and just as crucially, whisking away waste products. It's nonstop.
And it's really divided into two big interconnected loops, isn't it?
Precisely. First, there's the pulmonary circulation. You can think of it as the lung loop. It moves deoxygenated blood from your heart to your lungs to pick up oxygen, and then brings that fresh oxygenated blood right back to your heart.
Got it. Lungs and back.
Then you have the much larger systemic circulation. That's the body loop. This pumps oxygen-rich blood from your heart out to all other tissues in your body, delivers what's needed, collects the deoxygenated blood and waste, and brings it back to the heart to start the whole cycle over again.
So the arteries and veins are the big highways, like you said. But where does all the actual exchange happen? I'm thinking of the capillaries
Oh,
here.
the capillaries, yes.
Yeah.
They're the true workhorses, maybe the silent heroes of the whole system. These are the microscopic delivery and pickup points. Imagine fluid flowing out of your blood, carrying oxygen and nutrients into your tissues.
Okay.
And simultaneously, carbon dioxide and waste products flowing back in from the tissues. It's a constant two-way street. Most of that fluid actually flows back into your blood capillaries, but the remainder becomes lymph. That then makes its way back to the bloodstream via the lymphatic system. And it's also where your white blood cells, the immune system's defenders, can slip out of the vessels and enter tissues, especially when there's inflammation or infection happening.
Let's zoom in on the heart itself. This incredible muscle, it just never stops. What's its basic blueprint when you look really closely?
Well, the heart is a 4-chambered muscular pump, and it's nestled right in the center of your chest, maybe slightly to the left. It's surrounded by a tough protective sac called the pericardium.
Right.
Internally, you find the powerful cardiac muscle, which does all the actual pumping. Then there's the fibrous skeleton, which is fascinating. Imagine 4 tough rings of connective tissue surrounding the heart's valve openings.
Okay, like supports.
Support, yes. But it's more than that. It acts like the heart's internal firewall, an electrical insulator. It prevents random electrical impulses from causing chaos between the upper chambers, the atria, and the lower chambers, the ventricles.
Oh, okay. That's critical.
Very critical. And of course, the heart needs its own fuel supply. So it has its own dedicated blood supply.
Right.
The coronary arteries branching off the aorta, and the cardiac veins that drain back into the right atrium.
And the heart wall itself, it has distinct layers, doesn't it? Sort of like an onion.
Exactly, yeah, that's a good analogy. 3 distinct layers from outside in. The epicardium is the outermost protective layer, often has a cushioning layer of fat, and it's where those coronary vessels run. Then comes the myocardium. This is the thick, muscular middle layer that truly does the heavy lifting, the pumping. And if you could slice the heart open, you'd immediately see the difference. The atrial muscle's quite thin. It only needs to pump blood a short distance into the ventricles next door.
Right, lower pressure.
Much lower pressure. But the ventricular muscle, especially on the left side, pumping to the whole body, is incredibly thick and powerful. It reflects the sheer force needed. Finally, the endocardium is the smooth, innermost lining of the heart chambers. And it's here, in its deeper layer, that you find the heart's crucial electrical conducting system.
You mentioned the pericardium earlier, that protective sac. What happens if, say, fluid builds up in there?
Yeah, that's a serious condition. It's called cardiac tamponade. If excess fluid, maybe blood from an injury or just inflammatory fluid, rapidly accumulates in that pericardial cavity, it literally squeezes the heart.
Wow.
This compression prevents the chambers from filling properly with blood, severely impacting its ability to pump. It's a life-threatening emergency, usually needs quick drainage of the fluid. It really shows how structure dictates vulnerability.
Absolutely. Okay, so what about the heart valves? These are essential for keeping blood flowing one way, like highly efficient doors, constantly opening and closing. How are they designed to be so robust?
The heart valves.
Yeah.
They truly are marvels of biological engineering. They attach to those fibrous rings we just discussed. Each valve leaflet has 3 distinct layers, all made of connective tissue and covered by that smooth endothelium. First, the fibrosa. That's the core strength layer. Think of it as the strong, fibrous backbone providing incredible tensile
It's
stiffness.
the tough part.
The really tough part. And in valves like the mitral valve, this layer extends into the chordae tendineae, the famous heartstrings that attach to the papillary muscles. This prevents the valve from, flopping backward when the ventricle contracts.
Ah.
Then there's the spongiosa. This is the middle layer. Its structure is kind of loose and gel-like. It acts like a natural shock absorber, dampening vibrations when the valve slams shut and providing essential flexibility.
Like a cushion.
Exactly, a cushion. And finally, the ventricularis or atrialis layer. This facilitates the valve's movement, allowing the leaflet to extend and recoil perfectly with each single heartbeat.
It's just astounding that these valves are constantly bending and flexing millions and millions of times. Do they have their own direct blood supply to keep them going, like tiny vessels within the valve?
Surprisingly, no. This is one of those truly fascinating histological facts. Valve cusps are normally avascular, meaning no direct blood vessels run through them.
Really? How do they survive them?
They survive purely on nutrients and oxygen, diffusing directly from the blood that's constantly flowing over them. They're maintained by specialized cells called valvular interstitial cells. They keep the delicate extracellular matrix, the structure around them, in balance. But here's where it gets interesting clinically. In disease states, these very cells can transform and start actively remodeling the valve, which, unfortunately, can lead to problems.
And what kinds of problems happen when those incredibly durable valves start to malfunction?
Well, that leads to various heart valve diseases. For instance, in myxomatous mitral valve disease, that delicate extracellular matrix degenerates, making the valve sort of floppy and prone to prolapse, where it doesn't close tightly.
Leaky.
Leaky, exactly. Or think about rheumatic heart disease. Inflammation there causes the valve to become thick and rigid due to fibrosis, scarring. And then there's degenerative calcific aortic valve stenosis. Here, calcium nodules actually form on the aortic valve, making it stiff and narrow, hard to open.
So it restricts flow out of the heart?
Precisely. These are all really clear examples of how subtle microscopic changes at the cellular level can lead to very significant, sometimes life-altering heart conditions.
Okay, so the heart beats rhythmically, all on its own, without any conscious thought from us. How does it manage that incredible, nonstop rhythm?
That's thanks to its own amazing built-in electrical conducting system. This system is made of specialized cardiac muscle cells that can spontaneously generate electrical impulses.
Like tiny sparks.
Like tiny sparks, yeah. And they conduct them with incredible precision. It's a beautifully synchronized process. The sinoatrial SA node, which is located up in the right atrium, is your heart's natural pacemaker. It generates impulses at the fastest rate, typically 60 to 100 beats per minute.
The boss.
The boss, exactly. That impulse then spreads through the atria to the atrioventricular AV node. From there, the AV bundle, sometimes called the bundle of His, carries the impulse across that fibrous skeleton. Remember our electrical insulator?
Right, the firewall.
The firewall, yes. It carries it into the ventricles, where it then branches out into the Purkinje fibers, which spread the signal rapidly through the ventricular muscle.
So the SA node is definitely the lead conductor of this orchestra. But what happens if that primary pacemaker, the SA node, decides to take a break or falters?
That's a great question. And the heart has backups. If the SA node isn't functioning properly, the AV node can actually take over as a backup pacemaker.
Okay.
Though it does so at a slower rate, usually around 50 beats per minute. And if the electrical conduction to the ventricles is completely interrupted, a condition called complete heart block mill, those Purkinje fibers can still act as a last resort pacemaker, keeping the ventricles beating albeit at a very slow rate, typically only 30 to 40 beats per minute.
Wow, that's slow, but better than nothing.
Much better than nothing. It's quite remarkable, the redundancy built into the system.
I've definitely heard of Purkinje fibers before. What makes them look special under a microscope? What's their unique visual signature?
Yeah, if you look at a histological slide, Purkinje fibers are visibly much larger than typical heart muscle cells. That's the first clue. What's truly striking is that their contractile elements, the myofibrils, they're pushed way out to the very edge, the periphery of the cell.
Huh. Why is that?
Well, it leaves a large, pale staining center. And that pale appearance is due to a significant amount of stored glycogen.
Ah, fuel storage.
Exactly, lots of fuel. And this actually makes them more resistant to hypoxia, a lack of oxygen, than other heart muscle cells. It's a beautiful adaptation for their critical role in conducting that impulse quickly and reliably.
And when this incredibly intricate electrical system goes wrong, what are the clinical implications we often see?
Well, a common issue, particularly in older individuals, is sick sinus syndrome, or
Right.
SSS. This is often due to age-related degeneration of those SA nodal cells, the main pacemaker cells.
Right.
And this leads to abnormal heart rhythms, like alternating periods of very slow heart rates, bradycardia, and very fast heart rates, tachycardia. It's actually a primary reason why pacemakers get implanted worldwide. And this is why monitoring your heart's electrical activities through an electrocardiogram, a ECG or EKG, can reveal so much about its rhythm, rate, and even find evidence of localized damage, like from a heart attack.
Beyond this intrinsic electrical control, what external forces or systems influence our heart rate day to day, minute to minute?
Right, the heart isn't working in isolation. Your heart rate is also constantly being fine-tuned by your autonomic nervous system and by circulating hormones. Think of it like having a gas pedal and a brake for your heart. The parasympathetic nerves, mainly coming from the vagus nerve, release acetylcholine. That acts as the brake. It decreases your heart rate and the force of contraction.
Slows things down.
Slows things down. On the other hand, sympathetic nerves release norepinephrine. That's the gas pedal.
Hmm.
It increases heart rate and force.
Speeds things up.
Speeds things up. And hormones like adrenaline or epinephrine and more norepinephrine coming from your adrenal glands also hit that gas pedal.
Like during stress or exercise.
Exactly. Other things like caffeine can also speed things up, while certain medications like beta blockers or calcium channel blockers are designed to deliberately slow things down.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the heart, the pump. Now let's transition to the vast network of vessels, arteries, and veins. They all seem to share a consistent layered structure you mentioned. How does that work?
Yes, that's right. Almost all blood vessels, once you get past the tiny capillaries, share a fundamental three-layered structure. These layers are called tunics, and they go from the inside out. The tunica intima is the innermost layer, the one directly touching your blood. It starts with a single layer of flattened endothelial cells, which are incredibly active cells sitting on a base. Then there's a thin layer of connective tissue beneath.
Okay, the lining.
The lining, yes. Next is the tunica media, the middle layer. This is primarily made of smooth muscle cells arranged in circles around the vessel. This allows the vessel to constrict or dilate, changing its diameter.
Right, controlling flow.
Exactly. In arteries, this layer is particularly thick and also contains elastic fibers. Finally, the tunica adventitia is the outermost layer. It's mostly made of strong collagenous tissue, providing support. It's often thicker in veins than in arteries. And interestingly, large vessels even have their own tiny blood vessels within this outer layer, called the vasa vasorum vessels of the vessels, to supply the thick wall, plus a network of nerves, the nervi vasorum, to control that smooth muscle.
So the endothelium, that innermost lining, it seems to be doing far more than just being a passive barrier. What are some of its key active functions?
Oh, absolutely. You're spot on. Those endothelial cells are incredibly dynamic and absolutely crucial for maintaining blood homeostasis, keeping things stable. They act as a selective permeability barrier, carefully controlling what passes between your blood and the surrounding tissues. They use various methods, from simple diffusion for gases like oxygen to more complex transport systems for larger molecules. They are also vital in preventing blood clotting under normal circumstances. They actively produce natural anticoagulants and substances that stop platelets sticking, keeping your blood flowing smoothly.
But they can flip that switch.
They can.
Uh.
If that endothelium gets damaged, say by injury or inflammation, it can flip a switch and release substances that promote clotting. That's essential for wound healing, but obviously problematic if it happens inside an intact vessel. And critically, they modulate blood flow and vascular resistance by releasing substances that cause constriction or dilation.
Okay, let's focus on that last point, especially the vasodilators, the things that relax the vessels. I hear a lot about nitric oxide. What makes it such a star player?
Nitric oxide, NO, truly is a star. It's actually a tiny gas molecule, believe it or not, with a very short lifespan, produced by those endothelial cells.
Mm.
When blood flow creates a slight shear stress, basically friction on the endothelial cells lining the vessel, it stimulates them to produce NO.
Okay.
This NO then quickly diffuses into the underlying smooth muscle cells in that tunica media, the middle layer, and signals them to relax.
Ah, so it widens the pipe.
Exactly. This relaxation makes the vessel's diameter increase, which lowers vascular resistance and, in turn, helps lower your systemic blood pressure. NO is absolutely essential for keeping your cardiovascular system in balance, and it even acts as an anti-inflammatory agent.
So it's not just about the blood being pushed through. The vessel walls themselves are actively regulating how much blood flows where based on signals like NO.
Precisely. It's an incredible dynamic feedback loop happening constantly. And on the flip side of nitric oxide, you have endothelins. These are some of the most potent natural vasoconstrictors your body produces. When they bind to receptors on those vascular smooth muscle cells, they cause them to contract forcefully,
Squeezing the vessel.
squeezing the vessel, shrinking the lumen diameter, and significantly increasing vascular resistance. This elevates systemic blood pressure. High levels of one type, endothelin 1 for instance, are strongly linked to conditions like hypertension and the progression of atherosclerosis.
Speaking of which, let's connect that directly to atherosclerosis. This seems like such a massive issue for so many people. What's actually happening at the microscopic level inside those vessels?
It is indeed a major health crisis, yeah. It's thought to be related to over half of annual deaths in places like the U.S. Atherosclerosis essentially starts with damage or dysfunction of the tunica intima, that innermost endothelial layer, primarily in your large elastic arteries. Things like high bad LDL cholesterol, high blood sugar from diabetes, chronic high blood pressure, and smoking can all injure that delicate endothelial lining.
Okay.
When the endothelium is dysfunctional, it starts expressing more sticky molecules on its surface. This causes immune cells called monocytes, which are floating by in the bloodstream, to adhere and then squeeze through into the intima. There, they transform into macrophages, which are like the cleanup crew of the immune system. But here, they start gobbling up oxidized LDLs, the bad cholesterol that's gotten modified.
And then what happens to them?
They gorge themselves so much that they turn into what we call foam cells.
Hmm.
Literally, if you look at them under a microscope, their cytoplasm looks foamy because it's filled with all these lipid-containing bubbles.
So these foam cells, they're the beginnings of the infamous plaque.
Exactly. These foam cells, along with other immune cells like T lymphocytes, initially form what's called a fatty streak. That's the earliest visible lesion of atherosclerosis. Over time, smooth muscle cells actually migrate from the tunica media, the middle layer, into this area. They start producing collagen and other matrix components, forming a kind of protective fibrous cap over a growing core made of lipids, dead cells, and debris. This whole structure is the mature atheromatous plaque.
And the danger is when that plaque ruptures.
That's the major danger, yes. If this plaque ruptures, its inner contents are exposed to the blood. This can trigger rapid blood clot formation, thrombosis, right on top of the plaque. That clot can then potentially block the vessel entirely, leading to a heart attack if it's in a coronary artery, or a stroke if it's in an artery supplying the brain.
Okay, we classify arteries by their size and the characteristics of their middle layer, the tunica media. Can you walk us through the main types of these incredible blood highways?
Certainly. Arteries are generally divided into three key types based on size and function. First, you have the large arteries, also known as elastic arteries. Think of your aorta, the massive artery leaving the heart, and its major branches, like the pulmonary arteries. Their primary job is to conduct blood from the heart. But crucially, they also act like pressure reservoirs, maintaining blood pressure and continuous blood flow throughout the cardiac cycle.
How do they do that?
They do this because their thick middle layer, the tunica media, is packed with numerous sheets of elastic fibers, called elastic lamellae. During systole, when the heart contracts and ejects blood, these elastic walls stretch and absorb the pressure surge. Then, during diastole, when the heart relaxes and refills, these stretched walls recoil, like a stretched rubber band snapping back. This recoil pushes the blood forward and maintains pressure, ensuring flow continues even when the heart isn't actively pumping.
Smoothing out the pulses.
Exactly. Smoothing out the pulsatile flow from the heart. Next, we have medium arteries, often called muscular arteries. These are most of the named arteries you probably know, like the brachial artery in your arm or the femoral artery in your leg. Their tunica media has more smooth muscle and less elastic material compared to the large elastic arteries. Under the microscope, you often see a very prominent, wavy, internal elastic membrane separating the intima and media.
And what's the function of all that muscle?
Their strong muscular walls allow them to very effectively regulate blood flow to different regions of the body by constricting vasoconstriction or dilating vasodilation. They control distribution. Lastly, we have the small arteries and arterioles. These are the smallest arteries leading towards the capillary beds. Arterioles are distinguished by having only one or maybe two layers of smooth muscle in their tunica media. Small arteries can have up to 8 layers or so.
Tiny little vessels.
Very tiny, but incredibly important. These arterioles are the primary regulators of blood flow into your capillary networks. They act like the final gates or taps controlling flow into specific tissues. Their smooth muscle contraction can significantly increase vascular resistance, dramatically reducing or even temporarily shutting off blood flow to a particular capillary bed downstream.
So these tiny arterioles are absolutely key to directing blood where it's needed most, almost like a sophisticated traffic control system, like sending more blood to your muscles when you exercise.
That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
When you're running, for example, arterioles in your leg muscles will dilate, opening up to allow much more blood flow to fuel that intense activity. Meanwhile, arterioles going to less active areas at that moment, like perhaps your intestines, might constrict slightly to temporarily reduce flow there. It's an incredibly dynamic and responsive system.
And what about hypertension, high blood pressure? How does that condition relate to these tiny arterial traffic controllers?
Hypertension significantly impacts these vessels, particularly the small muscular arteries and arterioles. When their internal diameter, their lumen, is chronically reduced, maybe due to excessive constriction or structural changes, it leads to increased vascular resistance throughout your entire circulatory system.
Makes it harder for the heart to pump.
Exactly. The heart has to work much harder to push blood through these narrowed vessels. In chronic hypertension, the smooth muscle cells in these vessel walls can actually multiply, a process called hyperplasia, and they can also get larger, hypertrophy. This thickens the tunica media. This added muscle, often combined with accumulated lipids or other matrix changes, makes the vessels stiffer and narrower.
And that affects the heart over time.
Yes, absolutely. Over time, chronic hypertension forces the heart, specifically the left ventricle, which pumps to the body, to compensate by thickening its own wall. This is called left ventricular hypertrophy. While initially adaptive, this thickened heart muscle eventually becomes less elastic and efficient, increasing the risk of heart failure. It's another clear example of how microscopic changes in vessels have massive systemic consequences.
Okay, now onto the true exchange points. The capillaries themselves, the workhorses you called them. How do these tiny vessels vary across the body? They're not all the same, are they?
No, definitely not. Capillaries are the smallest blood vessels, often so narrow that red blood cells have to literally fold or squeeze through them single file. But there are 3 main types, each perfectly adapted to the specific exchange needs of the tissue they're in. First, continuous capillaries. These are the most common type. You find them in places like your muscles, skin, connective tissue, and importantly, the brain, forming part of the blood-brain barrier. They have an uninterrupted lining of endothelial cells joined by very tight junctions. This tightly restricts what can easily pass between the cells. They also have a continuous basal lamina, the layer underneath. Transport of larger molecules tends to happen through the cells via tiny vesicles.
Very selective.
Very selective, yes. Second, fenestrated capillaries. These are found where rapid fluid or metabolite exchange is crucial. Think of endocrine glands releasing hormones into the blood, the kidneys filtering blood, or the intestines absorbing nutrients. Their endothelial cells have numerous tiny circular openings like little windows or pores called fenestrations. These fenestrations, sometimes covered by a thin diaphragm, significantly increase their permeability to small solutes and water. They still have a continuous basal lamina, though.
So faster exchange.
Much faster exchange for specific molecules. And finally, discontinuous capillaries, which are also often called sinusoids. These are the largest and most irregularly shaped capillaries, with much wider lumens. You find them in organs like the liver, spleen, and bone marrow, where you need passage of very large molecules, even entire blood cells. They have large gaps between the endothelial cells, and their basal lamina is often discontinuous or even completely absent. This makes them extremely leaky.
Allows cells to get in and out easily.
Exactly. Like in the bone marrow, where new blood cells need to enter circulation, or the liver, where plasma proteins need to move freely.
What are parasites, and why are they so closely associated with capillaries? I see them mentioned alongside capillaries often.
Ah, parasites. They're a fascinating population of cells. They're kind of like undifferentiated mesenchymal stem
Mhm.
cells that literally wrap themselves around the outside of capillaries and some small venules, sharing the basal lamina.
What do they do?
They have several roles. They are contractile, meaning they can help regulate blood flow at the capillary level, influenced by signals like NO. They provide crucial structural support and stability to these delicate vessels. And what's truly remarkable is their versatility. Because they're stem-like, they can differentiate into various other cell types like fibroblasts, bone cells, or even smooth muscle cells. This means they play a vital role in normal processes like embryonic development and angiogenesis, the formation of new blood vessels, which is critical during wound healing or growth. But unfortunately, their dysfunction is also implicated in diseases like diabetic retinopathy, where abnormal vessel growth occurs in the eye, and even in tumor growth.
Are there any shortcuts in this vast circulatory network, ways to bypass the capillaries?
Yes, there are. Some tissues have structures called arteriovenous shunts or AV anastomosis. These are direct connections, like little bypass roads between small arteries, arterioles, and small veins, venules, that completely bypass the intervening capillary beds.
Where would you find those?
You find them commonly in the skin, particularly your fingertips, nose, ears, and lips. They're also found in erectile tissue.
And what's their purpose in the skin, for example?
In the skin, they play a vital role in thermoregulation, controlling body temperature. When these shunts are open, blood flows directly from the arteriole to the venule, bypassing the superficial capillaries near the skin surface. This reduces heat loss and helps conserve body heat when you're cold.
Ah, keeps the core warm.
Exactly. Conversely, when you need to lose heat, these shunts close, forcing blood to flow through the dense capillary networks near the skin surface, which enhances heat radiation away from the body. It's a neat little physiological bypass system.
Very clever. Finally, let's round out our tour of the circulatory system with veins and the lymphatic system. How do veins differ from arteries structurally?
Well, veins in general have thinner walls and larger, often more irregular or collapsed-looking lumens compared to their corresponding arteries.
Mm.
This reflects the much lower blood pressure within the venous system. They're also classified by size, starting with venules, then small, medium, and large veins. Venules, especially the tiny postcapillary venules right after the capillaries, are particularly important sites. This is where white blood cells often emigrate or leave the bloodstream to enter surrounding tissues during inflammation or infection. They're the main exit points. In lymphoid tissues like lymph nodes, there are even special venules called high endothelial venules, with cuboidal-shaped endothelial cells that are specialized for massive lymphocyte migration. As veins get larger, like medium veins, which accompany most muscular arteries, you can more clearly see all three tunics. But the tunica media, the muscle layer, is much thinner than in arteries, and the tunica adventitia, the outer layer, is usually the thickest layer. And a key feature of many veins, especially those in your limbs working against gravity, is the presence of valves. These are semilunar flaps, like little pockets, made of connective tissue covered by endothelium that project into the lumen.
To prevent backflow, right?
Exactly. They prevent the backflow of blood, ensuring it moves progressively towards the heart, especially when you stand up or move your muscles.
And that's precisely where we can get conditions like deep venous thrombosis, isn't it? When that flow is impaired.
Correct. Deep venous thrombosis, DVT, involves a blood clot, a thrombus, forming in a deep vein, most commonly in the legs or pelvis. This often occurs due to prolonged immobilization, like during long flights or bed rest, when blood flow slows down and those valves might not be working as effectively because the muscles aren't pumping.
And the big danger there is.
The major concern with DVT is the risk of a pulmonary embolism. If a piece of that clot breaks off, becomes an embolus, it can travel through the venous system back to the heart and then get pumped into the pulmonary arteries in the lungs, potentially blocking blood flow there, which can be fatal. It really highlights the importance of those valves and maintaining continuous blood flow.
Any other surprising structural features in veins, especially the large ones?
Yes, there's one more interesting feature. In the very large veins located close to the heart, like the vena cava bringing blood back to the heart, and even the pulmonary veins bringing blood from the lungs, their outermost layer, the tunica adventitia, can actually contain extensions of atrial heart muscle tissue. These are called myocardial sleeves.
Heart muscle. Outside the heart.
Exactly, extending a little way into the walls of these great veins where they connect to the atria. And interestingly, these myocardial sleeves have been identified as common sites, where the irregular electrical activity originates in atrial fibrillation, a very common abnormal heart rhythm disorder.
Oh,
So it's a subtle structural detail with significant clinical relevance.
fascinating. And to complete our picture of the body's transport systems, what about the lymphatic vessels? They run alongside blood vessels, right?
That's right. The lymphatic vessels form an entire parallel drainage system. Their main job is to collect the excess interstitial fluid, the fluid that leaks out of blood capillaries into the tissues, which is then called lymph, once it enters these vessels, and eventually return it to the bloodstream. They typically empty into large veins in your neck region. Lymphatic capillaries are the smallest vessels in this system, and they're quite unique structurally. They begin as blind-ended tubes, meaning they just end in the tissue spaces, unlike blood capillaries, which form loops.
So they just suck fluid in.
Pretty much. And critically, they lack a continuous basal lamina. The supporting layer underneath the endothelial cells is patchy or absent. This, along with overlapping endothelial cell edges that act like one-way minivalves, makes them much more permeable than blood capillaries. This unique structure is why they're so good at collecting not just excess fluid, but also larger molecules like leaked plasma proteins, inflammatory mediators, and even dietary fats absorbed from the intestine, which travel in specialized lymphatics called lacteals.
How do they stay open if the tissue swells?
Ah, good question. They have a tiny anchoring filaments made of fibrillin that connect their outer walls to the surrounding connective tissue. When tissue pressure increases, like during swelling or inflammation, these filaments actually pull on the lymphatic capillary walls, helping to hold them open so they can drain the excess fluid more effectively.
Clever design.
Very clever. As these lymphatic vessels get larger, collecting lymph from the capillaries, their walls gradually thicken, developing some smooth muscle and connective tissue. And importantly, like veins, they possess numerous valves all along their length.
Again, for one-way flow.
Exactly. These valves are crucial to ensure the lymph flows unidirectionally, eventually back towards the bloodstream, because there's no central pump like the heart in the lymphatic system. Lymph primarily moves due to external forces, like the contraction of surrounding skeletal muscles squeezing the vessels, pulsing of nearby arteries, and some contraction of smooth muscle within the walls of the larger lymphatic vessels themselves. And beyond just fluid balance, this system is absolutely crucial for your immune system. As lymph flows toward the bloodstream, it gets filtered through lymph nodes, strategically placed structures packed with immune cells. This allows immune cells to constantly monitor the lymph for pathogens or abnormal cells collected from the tissues.
Wow, it truly is incredible when you stop and think about the level of intricate design happening constantly within our bodies. From, the selective permeability of a single endothelial cell to the perfectly coordinated rhythm of the entire heart. This deep dive really shows how these microscopic structures directly influence our macroscopic health every second.
Indeed, it really does. Understanding these cellular and tissue-level details gives you a whole new level of appreciation for the complexity, the resilience, and frankly, the sheer ingenuity of the cardiovascular system. Every single beat, every exchange in the capillaries, every tiny cell playing its part, it's all a testament to incredibly sophisticated biological engineering.
Absolutely. And the next time you hear about a condition like atherosclerosis or maybe hypertension, you'll have a much clearer, deeper picture of the minute microscopic changes happening inside those vessels and why they matter so much for overall health.
Which, raises an important question, I think. Considering the constant challenges these systems face, just relentless wear and tear, pressure changes, potential pathogens, disease processes, what do you think is the most surprising way our bodies manage to maintain such remarkable balance and function at this incredibly detailed microscopic level?
That's a fantastic question to ponder for me. Maybe it's the redundancy we talked about, like the backup pacemakers in the heart, or perhaps the dynamic nature of the endothelium constantly adjusting. It's hard to pick just one. Maybe the sheer regenerative capacity, the ability of tissues to repair themselves to some extent. What stands out to you?
That's tough. I lean towards the intricate communication, the constant signaling between cells like NO from endothelium talking to smooth muscle, or immune cells being called to action. It's this constant microscopic conversation that allows for such fine-tuned adjustments and responses. The complexity of that signaling network is just astounding.
A constant conversation, keeping everything running. I like that. Definitely something to think about. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the microscopic world of the cardiovascular system.